Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday live stream. We are joined as ever by my buddy, Jerry V. Hall from Costa Rica. Jerry, how you doing today?
I'm great. Pura vida, all pura vida.
Yep. Pura vida. And let me tell you, so if you've been watching the show for the last couple of days, we've talked about this thing called buy the invasion, which unfortunately people will say, Rob, do you really want to profit from the invasion? What is going on? Look, I got a sphere of control, and I can only control those things within my sphere. So I can't pretty much do anything outside of that sphere. I can try, but this is where we're at. And of course, this channel is mostly digital assets and cryptocurrency, or talking about the things going on in Costa Rica with Jerry. But today, if you had done what we had talked about, you're up pretty well today. And it seems to kind of be reminiscent of things that are going on. Now, I'm not going to call it a war, and then, of course, we talked about why we don't call it a war at this point. This is the 1973 War Powers Act. Has to go through Congress the last 2 days. If you want to take a look at that, you can look it up. Talked about this yesterday. But during this happenings that's been going on recently, you're up pretty good today. Look, in the last 24 hours, no, that's not right. 3.1%. That is not correct. Let me go here. Okay, that's correct. So yesterday, February 28th, the last day of February, we bottomed out at 63,000. And, when wars come in, people get, of course, the markets don't like ambiguity. They don't like what's going on. They don't like the uncertainty. But as we talked about it, if we took a look back just 4 years ago, roughly, February 24th, 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, again, these are different circumstances. There was actually a big pump over time in 2022. And it was almost to the date 4 years ago. It was 4 years and 4 days ago that actually happened. And there was a nice little pump, and that's what we are seeing here. It went from 63,176 up to almost 68,000. And if we take a look at the markets themselves, I mean, across the board, it's looking pretty good. You've got the best, Binance, up almost 3, Ethereum up 3.3, Solana up 3.2, and Tron barely holding on at a whopping 0.3%. However, I will say, one thing that does impress me about Tron, I don't know how this happens, but over the last year, it's actually up 21%. And if you take a look at any of the other ones in the top 10, even Bitcoin, over the last year, you're down. Anyhow, Jerry, what's your thoughts on this as far as like buying the invasion and what's going to happen and moving forward?
There has forever been this quandary or the dilemma that somebody who has something in geographies that are war torn or conflict or any of that, and that is, how do I keep my stuff if I leave, right? Real estate, very hard to deal with real estate in a conflict zone. How about money? Well, money might not be accepted, you're right? Or it may be losing value. What about gold and things of that nature? Traditionally, that was how people moved, got away, but it's very hard. It's very encumbersome. Try to get on an airplane with your life savings in gold. Very difficult. The Bitcoin play that started, 12, 13 years ago, people using it as a way to move, to actually hold and have in their possession their wealth. That made a lot of sense. And so we saw a lot of that with the Ukrainian element, especially in the Ukraine. There was a measurable transition from traditional assets into Bitcoin. Right. For the purposes of being able to move, right, and retain your economic energy. I don't think that's any different today. I think there are wealthy people in Iran. I think the same thing applies. And I think there are smart people that are saying, this is an asset that's going to leverage that particular gameplay or use case, right? The ability to store my value in something that maybe all I need to remember is 12 words. Or have my TANGEM card or my hardware wallet or whatever. And yeah, I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
That's a good point. And this is something that we've talked about in the past, we've talked about frequently. And it's something that it's kind of like escapes me, because unfortunately, I'm a homer, which is I'm an American, and I only think I think in the way of an American all the time. And when I think about fleeing the country and your specific currency, like in Iran, the Iran rial, to escape that country or to move things around or to get any types of goods and services, they'll probably be available for that purpose. But what's going to happen with the economy or with the rial moving forward? Usually, and we see collapses moving about. So Jerry, it's a good point to actually put that something into Bitcoin, 12 words, seed phrases, mnemonic phrases, and just kind of go from there. Now, of course, people will say, well, what happens if you have to transact and there's no, say, like electricity, and how do we, move from there? Then it would all be gold and silver. Jack Dorsey made this incredible little app not too long ago where you just need essentially a mesh network of Bluetooth devices, and you're able to actually move Bitcoin in that way. So if you wanted to just do peer-to-peer transactions, which is what Bitcoin is actually made to be, you could actually do it that way. Now, again, people would say, well, we're not really using Bitcoin for that purpose, and you are right. But it is available to all, and it is quite interesting how you put that in, Jerry. So yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. But moving on, what does that mean for us, the investors? Which, of course, that's what everybody's thinking. What does this mean for me? And it comes down to, in 2022, and before that, 2018, 2014, midterm years are the worst for traditional markets and for crypto digital asset markets, regardless of just how much momentum we potentially could have, and like what Jerry just talked. So if we take a look, going back to 24th of February 2022, like we were talking about for the Russia-Ukraine war, we can see that Bitcoin was a nice price of 38,000. Now, if we move forward from that 38,000, it actually bumped up all the way to 43, 44. And we actually hit sideways all the way until May. Essentially, we're the same price. It was going up and down and chopping and back and sideways. But after that, it just started to break down, as it always does every 4 years. And then we went from 34, a local bottom at 30, and then we had a nice little bottom here at 20, and then we had a nice little bottom here at 15,700. So I know people will say, well, bought the invasion, this is great. Plan accordingly. That's all I can tell you, because usually, historically speaking, we're going to see some more choppiness, even though the next couple of months, weeks or so, we could see a little bit of strength and chopping sideways. But for me, I just don't see this as, okay, now we go to Valhalla and everything keeps going up. Remember, wars are violence, and nobody knows which way this actually will go. And we don't know how much this could escalate out of control. So make sure that you are protected to the downside right now, and make sure that you are following the rules. Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. Everything's a scam. Don't leave things in exchanges. Don't use leverage. Take profits along the way. Jerry, did I miss anything?
No, that was well said. Have goals. Have goals, right? What are your goals, right? I'm pretty clear about what mine are. Mine are not yours, right? And yours are not mine. And the wonderful thing is that we have so much content now to get really good advice, right? My heart goes out to anybody in a conflict zone. I have been shot at. It is no fun. It's scarier. It is a very unique place to be when you think you could die in an instant, or at least my experience was of it wasn't comfortable. You know what I mean? So, yeah, my heart goes out to anybody that's in that situation. It's hard for us Americans to really, really understand unless you've been in a conflict zone. You've been like you were in the military. I don't know if you were actually in combat, but yeah, there's a whole world outside of us that are facing these things, whether it be economic war, like what they had in Argentina and Venezuela for so long, or actual bullets flying like in the Middle East over the last 20 years, lot of crazy stuff going on. So have goals, protect yourself. I think your rules are incredible. I've adopted them, right? Sticking to plan, it's super important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's helped out so far. So we'll see. We'll keep it going. So all the different things that have been said here, we'll cover this in the Q&A session. But let's talk about, before we get into that, let's just talk quickly about some positive stuff that's going on, especially for the crypto sphere. I don't know if you guys knew this, but apparently this just came out from Coin Bureau. Morgan Stanley moves to become a crypto bank. This was just put out, I think, today. Wall Street giant filed for a national trust bank charter to launch a crypto-focused entity called Morgan Stanley Digital Trust. This would allow Morgan Stanley to custody crypto and expand digital asset services. I want to say that Morgan Stanley has quite a bit of assets under management, so why not? But on top of that, I just did a quick little look-see of who is actually filing and has been conditionally approved to be a national trust bank. And actually, I think we should probably go over this, Jerry. What the heck's a nationally trusted bank? Well, that's pretty close. Hold on. I'll get to that in a second. Nationally trusted banks are different from normie banks. We talked about this, I think, yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. Regular commercial bank or a normie bank is where we all know what it is, right? We put our money into it. We get some loans. They do fractional reserve lending, little wink, wink, nod, nod, bam, bam, and we get the things out there. And, we can move money around. There's primary risk is just credit risk for the banks, and some go under, some don't. But that's why you get FDIC insurance here in the States, $250,000. Now, a national trust bank is totally different. That's for not the normies. That's the high net worth individual and corporation that wants to side with them. They are going to take those assets and they're going to say, hey, you can put them here. I mean, they're off balance, but you can stick them here for the trust. They're fiduciary, asset management, fee-based income. Essentially, when you move things around, sell them, they're going to charge you a fee just to put it on there. And it's not very cheap, actually. But of course, legally standpoints, national trust banks are great. And talking about assets to put in there, that could be traditional equities. That could be any types of precious metals, gold and silver. That could be even cryptocurrency and digital assets. And that's why you're seeing these national trust banks going through the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or the OCC, and people are trying to get into it because they realize that the normie banks are great to be there, and we're going to need those. But as time goes on, we're going to need a heck of a lot more of these national trust banks. So to get into that, who has filed for it? Morgan Stanley, we just talked about. Payoneer, not for sure with them. Payo Digital Bank. Laser Digital, filed on January 27th. And of course, El Presidente Trumpo. World Liberty Financial has a pending application for World Liberty Trust Company. Ugh. Anyhow, 2026 conditional approvals, Crypto.com already has gone through, and looks like they're going to have a national trust bank. Stripe also has a conditional approval. That's a pretty good idea. Imagine if you have global remittances and global payments, and you're a national trust bank. What do you think they're going to go for? Probably crypto. And then Protégeo Holdings Corporation received approval in February 2026 for National Digital Trust Company. So I got to tell you, there are things moving on in the background that people don't potentially realize, but I think these companies see where things are going, and they want to go and skate to where the hockey puck is, not where it's at right now. Jerry, thoughts on this one?
I'll be honest, this was not something that was in my wheelhouse until 2019, when I was reading basically a I don't want to say an expose, we'll call it an op-ed on what the Federal Reserve's working group was doing. I don't know if you remember, but Ripple, Bank of America, there were a whole bunch of these companies back in 2018, 2019 in a Federal Reserve working group to try to figure out what they were doing, what they were going to do, how these technologies could affect, our legacy systems. And I remember these national trusts being discussed as one potential structure where these technologies could really be implemented and bring about, like, there was this whole list of like goods and services that they could provide their clientele. and be under a national regulatory regime. And I guess that has now fallen under the OCC.
Right.
And rightfully so. I mean, I wouldn't want it under the Department of Treasury per se, like, directly, but the OCC, which is in that branch, is a great regulator for this. So, and do you remember Bank of America had also discussed this back, maybe, I think it was 2019, maybe 2020. They talked about this as a potential. So it makes sense that Morgan Stanley, because Bank of America and Morgan Stanley were like this forever, right? I mean, they literally were the same company until they broke, right? So
banker's gonna bank. That's pretty much how it works out. So yeah, I kind of do remember those. Thanks for the history lesson, going down memory lane. Bankers doing the things that bankers do. Fantastic. So everybody, before we get into the Q&A, just a little side note. With the war, with the skirmish that is happening right now, Dubai apparently has had some drones fall into it. I don't know if these are missiles for sure, but Palm Jumeirah, Dubai, I see this was actually struck. And then if you're in Dubai, looks like multiple regional airspace closures. Estimates have temporarily suspended all operations to and from Dubai up until 1500 hours United Arab Emirates time on Monday, the 2nd of March. So it looks like there's some things that are happening over there. Of course, on the tip, right next to Iran, things are not looking so good. So I always think, I'm like, who do I know in Dubai? And friend of the show, Guy, and Nick over there, and Dan and the whole crew from Coin Bureau. So I reached out to them and go, hey, are you guys okay? Because I know you guys live there. And Guy said, yeah, and that actually, the place that got struck, this was like not too far away from where I was. So I was like, Guy, you got to be careful over there. I don't know what's happening. And I said, if you need us to, I can assemble a team. We can go over there and we can try to break you out, saving Private Turner. But he said, no, he's okay. So everybody asking me, which I get a lot of questions about this, Guy is fine over there in Dubai. And then lastly, before we get to Q&A, I will say, as a reminder, these skirmishes, these outbreaks, these types of operations that are going on, there's always going to be massive negativity. As 3 United States service members were killed in Operation Epic Fury, 5 were seriously wounded. I would just like to say a moment of silence for those poor soldiers who were involved. And as a reminder, these type of skirmishes can only do us so far. All right. So everybody, thanks so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. Like today's video, thumbs up, subscribe, and now we'll get to a little Q&A and answer all your questions. Okay. Chris says, this has been planned and talked about for a while. They changed the rules, allow banks or the Fed to have up to 2% in crypto a while back. Yeah, is there any more updates, Jerry, you've heard about as far as like the Clarity Act and yield and all this stablecoin nonsense that's going on?
No, I know what you know, basically. Nothing new has been gleaned from my side of the street, that's for sure. Unfortunately, as we get, the news cycle is dominated with the conflict information, and rightfully so. It does garner a lot of eyeballs. But they did say, before all the hoopla around the conflict, that April looked like is when we're going to get our definitive answers, and I'm hoping that is true. That's not very far away. April will be here before you know it.
I can see that. What's that term, Jerry? Sell and may go away. Maybe that'll be like. Yes,
sell and may go away. Exactly. For years, that was the prototypical term in amongst brokers.
I have to agree. How about this one? Andy says, somehow it seems like the market has been pre-planned and it just pairs with different narratives to make sure it happens. It's one of those things where like you have to wonder about that, because it seems like we have these things just playing out over and over and over again, especially with this whole thing with Jane Street and the manipulation that's been obviously going on there for quite some time. Do you think it's just people just feeding into the narrative and getting rich off that, Jerry? Do you think these things just kind of naturally occur and we are in the matrix?
I don't know about the matrix part, but there are definitely, when you apply game theory and you look at who is incentivized for what, and then you look at, like, for instance, look at a chart and going back, forever, companies like Lockheed, you fill in Boeing, I mean, they continue to garner higher and higher returns. And it seems like it's always predicated on the back of these new, we'll call them conflicts for lack of a better term. And it doesn't matter if the U.S. is involved or not. Right?
True. Doesn't matter.
So is it planned? I don't know. I have no evidence to say that. But it sure does seem oddly familiar that there's always these new impetus for these companies to get more and big more, whether it be a pharmacological company with some health scare or whatever, or a conflict scare that creates weapon manufacturers to notch up.
Right.
So I don't know, man. What did you open the show with sphere of influence? I have no sphere of influence over there. I can control what's in my portfolio, what goes in my mouth, and what I decide to dedicate my time and energy to. After that, other than that, I don't have much to offer.
We can only do so much, right, Jerry? That's pretty much what it is. How about this one? New Tide Trader says, I don't know why Clarity Act is talked about this much. I could care less what happens. I couldn't care less. I can still use DeFi for even greater yields. That's true with my stable coins.
Yeah.
You don't need to rely on banks and centralized exchanges. I will say that is 100% true for the native crypto individual. But to get the normies in here, it's got to be the banks. I mean, they're not going to trust. They're not going to trust Uniswap. They're not going to trust, like, okay, I put this internet nerd money where, and I get how much? Okay, how does that work? And how much can I? Is there any FDIC insurance? No. Well, okay. Has this ever happened before? FTX, Voyager. Okay, that sounds awful. Where are we going here? I think New Tide Trader, like, for you, it's awesome, but you are head and shoulders above everybody else. I think that's really what happens. I think to get to the people that we need to bring in, we need to be like, hey, here's the protection. Here's what you can do. It's not so much outrageous. And you know what? That FTX, Voyager, Celsius, BlockFi stuff, yeah, that happened. But we got some new tricks. We got Morgan Stanley here. We got Fidelity here. We got all these different banks. And if you like the president, we've also got a World Liberty Fi. Or if you hate the president, we got Morgan Stanley for you. Anyhow, that type of thing. And Jerry, what do you think?
You know, I can tell you this. I have been pulled. I've made so many mistakes. I mean, you could literally create a whole book on the mistakes Jerry made to try to teach the people so that they don't need to make them. And the sad part of that is, regardless of how much we communicate these pitfalls, people left on their own who are learning this are going to make many of the same mistakes, regardless of how many times we broadcast, I made this mistake, don't do this. And it's just the way it is. So if we want adoption to go beyond the 500 million people that are tinkering in this world, it needs to be idiot proof. We can't have John Smith, the guy that works for the city of Blankenship, who might only have $300-400 a month disposable income, to put money into something and have it disappear. We will lose him forever. Very few people are willing to put in 100 hours to learn about something, and we need an industry that will give people who are willing to put a half an hour into it access and security and access and security. And we can't do that. DeFi hasn't done it. No company within crypto has done it. So maybe Morgan Stanley can.
Maybe they can.
I hope so.
Maybe they can bridge the gap for a little bit of trust, because we sure could use that. That's for sure. Of course, people will say, I don't trust banks, so I want to do it this way. And that's the beauty of digital assets and crypto. You can either choose this side.
Can I rebel against that statement? That
Sure.
whole, I don't trust banks. How many people who say I don't trust banks actually don't use their bank account? Don't have a bank account. I think that is there is so much BS around that. You know what? I don't trust stuff either, but guess where my money is? It's in the bank. It's not sitting in a coffee can in my kitchen. I can guarantee you that.
Look, this is what it is. It's like the Puerto Rico roads. Okay. I don't trust the roads here in Puerto Rico, but damn it, I got to use them all the time. And there are potholes. There are potholes the size of China. And guess what? They only come out at night, and they always attack my car. I got to use them. Common sense is a form of evidence.
Come for the crypto, stay for the laughs. That was funny.
Yeah. Dante. Alex Wells says Dante aches crypto. Weird. So this was, I remember when I first did I rolled out my website. There's a website. There's a link in the description, danteachescrypto.com. And it's 100% free. It's always free. It's all like the stuff that I think everybody should need to know and like the basics. Just go over there and sign up. But I remember when I first put that out there, like Alex or whoever else would say, like, why is your website called Dante Aches Crypto? Doesn't make any sense. And I just banned everybody that said it. I'm like, oh, these are all bots. But yeah, Dan teaches crypto, Dante Aches Crypto. Very funny. Good stuff. Let's see.
So Bodan doesn't use banks or credit unions. I would love to know how he is able to interact in a world, especially in the United States, that's so predominantly digital value exchange, whether it be your debit card or, Venmos and PayPals and blah, blah, blah.
Bodan's probably like me.
Ultimately curious, not so that I can argue or demean you or criticize, just general information. I really like to know, how is somebody living outside of that kind of legacy structure that's been so predominant, especially in the Western Hemisphere for the last 20 years? Yeah.
So Bodan said he clarified. He goes,
I use credit unions. Okay.
Yeah, not banks. Period. Credit unions there. And I was just gonna say one thing about my wife. Actually said this to me. She said, she said, isn't it amazing how we used to use cash for everything? Now it's just debit and credit cards. And she said, like, so if we go to a local merchant here, and it's whatever it is that we're buying, it's $50. Okay, here's my debit card, $50. Well, they're going to take 3% plus 30 cents per transaction fee, right? So now you're at $46 and some change. And then that money that you paid the merchant has to go to replenish whatever you bought. Let's say it's like wood or it's steel or whatever else it is. So now they got to pay their distributor with credit cards or debit cards, something like that. And now, before you know it, it just gets eroded away until it finally comes back to the merchant, and that person got $20 because it just the same thing. So she said, and she's right. She goes, if you want to help out the society or help out people, use cash. And I thought to myself, it'd be even greater is if more, and we've talked about this before, more retailers would actually just accept Bitcoin and other types of crypto and just make it simple. And then the transaction fees wouldn't be so high. We'd pay the transaction, but it's not so bad. I just thought put that in there. Let's see. Under the verse says tomorrow will be a dump of note, probably so.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So I want to be like the audience. I want to ask you a question. Rob, do you accept any form of digital assets for your Airbnbs or Vibros?
Nope. And I'll tell you why. It's because we have Airbnb and VRBO, and that's what they accept, which is...
can only... Okay, so when you subscribe to those things, it'd be like Uber. You can only pay Uber in the form that Uber allows you to pay, credit card or cash.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And people will say, why don't you just take Bitcoin? Or why don't you just take this and just do, it's like some kind of self-made or self-registration. So, well, I can do that. And, we've talked about this. The problem is that someone comes to me, wants to rent one of my places, and they trash the place. Now, who do I go to? Do I go to the Bitcoin wallet? Like, hey, give me some more Bitcoin because this guy just trashed my place. No. It's not happening. Well, you can take him to court. Well, who the hell was he? He's just some guy that paid in Bitcoin. These are the things that, we have to really kind of think about before we go out. And what if he burns my house down? Or what if he squats in the place and just says, I'm not leaving? Good luck, sucker. If you're in California, you got problems. Anyhow, that's just one of those deals that people have to consider. All right. Bodan. Cash is king. That's not investing. Very true.
Yeah, don't invest in cash. Loser.
well, like if you're like multi-millionaire like Jerry, you can do treasuries and stuff like that. It's pretty nice. Let's see.
God, what a killing Tether made off of 3% treasuries.
And guess what? They get to keep all of that, and it's illegal for them to give any yield to their customers. So Tether's like, so you're telling me that we have to keep this $316 million or whatever it was that we actually gained? Yes.
Their cash flow is disgustingly high.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
But yeah. Jimmy says cash is a melting ice cube. That's very true.
Correcto.
Ephraim says holes like China and Puerto Rico. So true. Car is suffering. Hey, that's what we get here. But let me tell you, you may hit a pothole. You may hit a big hole in the streets. But guess what? You're in the best place in the world. Puerto Rico is the greatest. Weather is fantastic. Food's pretty good if you know where to go, and the beaches are amazing. I think that's it. Yeah, I think we asked everybody. Amon Perry's here. Mike's here. Toll-free fee. All right, buddy, that's it. I don't want to take too much of Jerry's time, but that's it for today. Thanks everybody for stopping by. We appreciate you. Like to subscribe, hit the like button on your way out. Fantastic. Next week, we're going to have, of course, do this again, but I want to get Jerry right now is going through the process of doing his AI open claw. I want to see how he's doing with that. So he's just starting that today. Let's see if he makes it, and then maybe we do a video about how to do that.
There you go. That's the challenge. Can the old guy get a working agent by next Sunday? That will be the litmus test, right?
Hey, if we can do it, anybody can do it. All right, everybody, that's it for today. Thanks so much. See you on the next.